She sipped her drink, watching the room. And then a child approached with eyes that knew too much. Zina Adeyemi had arrived early at the private executive reception in Seoul. The hotel ballroom was quiet, restrained, almost sterile in its luxury. Low conversation hummed across clusters of tables, men and women in expensive suits and evening dresses leaning in to whisper about acquisitions and investments worth millions. Soft amber lights reflected off polished floors, glassware, and the occasional gold accent. Zina sat in the far corner, back to the wall, tablet open, reviewing spreadsheets and contracts. Her black blazer was crisp, her posture impeccable. She didn't care for the social games, the polite smiles, the murmured pleasantries. She came here for business, to close deals, and to leave before the champagne started flowing. Her eyes scanned the room with practiced patience. Politicians leaned toward bankers in quiet conversation. Investors nodded subtly at each other. Two men she recognized from a recent Lagos Oil Consortium debate exchanged a hand signal that looked suspiciously like a warning. Security moved quietly, earpieces tucked behind their ears. Observant, silent, almost too much for a reception this low-key. She adjusted the sleeve of her blazer and leaned back, sipping slowly. Her phone buzzed once, twice, a text from Lagos reminding her of the stakes. "Close it tonight, no delays. Hey, we're counting on you." Zina exhaled, typing a short reply. "Always." She was about to return to her numbers when she noticed movement, a small shadow crossing the room. A little girl, 9 years old maybe, perfectly poised, hair braided neatly, a white dress with gold buttons running straight down the front, shoes polished black and gleaming. She moved confidently, deliberately, her eyes scanning the room like she understood exactly who was important and who was nothing. Zina blinked. Now the girl stopped at her table, and without a word slid a chair back and sat down. Not a fidget, not a giggle. Just calm. Too deliberate. Zina's fingers tightened on her tablet. "Excuse me," she said evenly. "Do you belong here?" The girl's eyes didn't flinch. They were steady, unafraid, and unnervingly intelligent. "My name is Hana," she said softly. "Okay. Hana what?" "People don't say my last name out loud," she replied, almost like it was a warning. Zina frowned, and glancing around. No parent, no guardian, nobody else noticing. Waiters moved past, but never approached. A few suited men glanced briefly in Hana's direction and immediately averted their eyes. The air around the girl seemed to hum with something unspoken. Zina tried to shake off the unease. "All right, sit quietly then. I'm busy." Hana's eyes didn't move from Zina's fingers on the tablet. "You're not from here," she stated. Not a question, just a fact. Zina paused. I travel a lot," she said carefully. "It's a habit." Hana nodded once. "You don't trust anyone in this room." Zina's pulse skipped. "And how would you know that?" "You look at the exits," Hana said matter-of-factly. Zina leaned back, lips pressed together. Not many adults noticed these things, much less a 9-year-old. Her mind raced, cataloging possibilities. Rich family? Child prodigy? Or something else? Minutes passed. Hana did not fidget. They did not play with the glass in front of her, did not whisper to anyone else. She just watched Zina, watched the people Zina ignored, watched patterns. Then a man approached, tall, expensive suit, silver tie, one of the investors Zina had hoped to speak with tonight. He paused when his gaze landed on Hana. Something in his posture shifted. A shadow passed over his confident smile. He bowed his head slightly, not to Zina, but to the child. "Good evening," he murmured carefully, almost too carefully. Zina froze. Her brain scrambled. She leaned slightly toward Hana. "Do you know him?" The girl shrugged. "No." "Then why?" Zina's voice trailed off. The man quickly straightened, muttered a vague apology, and left. Fast, too fast. Zina turned fully to the girl. "Explain this." Hana tilted her head. "I know enough." Zina's stomach tightened. Something in the room had shifted, invisible but undeniable. The guests continued their murmurs, but the atmosphere felt different, heavier, protective, respectful, fearful. Zina whispered, "Who are you, really?" Hana leaned closer. eyes glinting. Does it matter? It did. Zina's pulse hammered. She felt the edges of a trap forming around her, invisible but very real. Before she could speak, she overheard fragments of conversation from the table next to her. That's his daughter. Don't stare. If Tae-ho finds out... The name hit her chest like a hammer. Tae-ho Lee. She had heard whispers in business circles, not publicly, not in the papers. Money that moved silently, people who disappeared quietly, deals that never made sense. And she looked at the girl. Small hands, calm demeanor, 9 years old, and somehow deadly important. You're, Zina began. Not the first, Hana interrupted softly. But you might be the last. Zina swallowed, heart racing, questions buzzing in her head. Why her? Why tonight? And why did the daughter of one of the most feared crime lords in Asia just sit at her table? Hana smiled faintly. I like you. Zina forced a laugh she didn't feel. You don't even know me. I know enough, Hana said. She stood suddenly, smoothed her dress, lowered her voice so only Zina could hear. You don't get to choose. Then she walked away. Security men fell into formation around her instantly. Invisible circles appeared and disappeared as the world shifted back to normal. Zina sat frozen, tablet forgotten, drink untouched, heart hammering. She realized one terrifying truth. Hana had chosen her. And once the daughter of Tae-ho Lee chooses you, you don't get to walk away. If this opening pulled you in, comment what you think Hana wants from Zina, and subscribe so you don't miss the next part, because the story is only getting darker from here. The room buzzed with quiet chatter again, but Zina couldn't shake the unease. Hana was gone, but yet her presence lingered like a shadow stretched over the corner where Zina had been sitting. She set her tablet down and scanned the room. Nothing looked out of place. The investors whispered in their little circles. Staff moved gracefully. Glasses tinkled softly. Normal. Safe. Not normal. Her instincts screamed otherwise. Zina noticed small things now she hadn't before. A man by the bar, who wasn't supposed to be part of the reception, kept his gaze just on her table, not on the guests. Not on the food, just her. A server passed by and lingered a moment too long near her drink, hands trembling slightly. Even the photographer who had been snapping pictures earlier stopped when Zina met his eyes, and instead of moving on, he adjusted his camera, pretending to focus elsewhere. But his eyes betrayed him. She wasn't alone anymore. Hana had returned silently to her mind, the way a threat hides behind a smile. The memory of the girl's words cut sharp. You don't get to choose. Zina tried to swallow. She had never been afraid of anyone in a business setting. Not CEOs, not corrupt politicians, not men with too much money and too little conscience. But a child, a 9-year-old. And yet, that tiny girl carried the weight of something lethal, something untouchable. A soft chime sounded. Her phone lit up. Another message from Lagos. Confirm the contracts. Fine, we're watching you. She almost dropped the device. Not because of the message itself, but because her instincts screamed a warning. And then the movement started. From the corner of her eye, she saw 3 men, suits pressed perfectly, no badges, no name tags, slowly surrounding the edges of the reception. They didn't interact with anyone else. Their eyes never left her. Zina's pulse spiked. She leaned back, calm on the outside, chaos underneath. That one question repeated itself over and over. Why is this happening? She tried to think logically. Maybe Hana was just precocious. Maybe she belonged to a rich family. Maybe security had orders she didn't know about. But the way the men moved, they weren't security assigned by the hotel. Their movements were too deliberate, too measured, too protective. And suddenly, Zina realized the frightening truth. Hana's presence wasn't random, not the girl, not the way men deferred to her, and not even the hushed whispers she had overheard earlier. She was being marked. She had been chosen. Her thoughts spun faster. Chosen for what? Protection? Recruitment? Or a test? A waiter approached her now. He didn't meet her eyes. He slid a folded envelope onto the table. Small, heavy, thick enough to contain paper and something more. Zina froze. Slowly, cautiously, she opened it. Inside were a few photographs. One of her arriving at the hotel, another of her walking to the reception. and a third showing her sitting in the corner alone, and one note, written carefully, almost childishly neat. "We're watching. Be careful." Her stomach dropped. It wasn't a warning from the hotel. It wasn't from business rivals. She recognized the signature instinctively. Meticulous, controlling, invisible. The mafia. She looked up. Across the room, a woman laughed lightly at a joke, unaware. A man whispered numbers to another. A couple of kids of executives ran by, playful, normal, innocent. Except here, in this corner, she wasn't normal anymore. The envelope slipped from her fingers, landing with a soft tap. The men in suits shifted slightly, as if noting she had read it. Zina's thoughts raced. The name from earlier, Tae-ho Lee, loomed in her mind. One of the most feared crime lords in Asia. Invisible, omnipresent, and untouchable. And now she understood the danger fully. She had drawn attention. Not just from Hana, from everyone watching over Hana, from the Empire. And every instinct screamed run. But Zina didn't move. She couldn't. Not yet. She needed answers first. A soft tap at the table caught her attention. Hana back again, silent as a shadow, 9 years old, smiling faintly as though nothing had happened. "You read it," Hana said. "Not accusatory, just factual." Zina's chest tightened. "Yes. Who sent this?" Hana tilted her head. "People who care about me. People who care about you now." "Care? This is surveillance," Zina said, hot disbelief threading her voice. "This is dangerous." Hana's smile didn't fade. "Dangerous is just a word. Some people just call it a fact." Zina leaned back, glancing around the room. Everyone else moved like nothing had happened. But the men in suits, they were always there. Always shifting subtly, always present, always unseen unless she looked closely. "You shouldn't be here," Zina whispered finally. Hana's eyes flicked up, sharp and calculating. "And yet I am. You're here. That makes it mutual." Zina swallowed hard. She felt the tension coil inside her chest like a live wire. One wrong move, one glance too much, one misstep, and she could become a liability. And then it hit her. Hana wasn't innocent. Not fully, not even close. She was small. She was a child. But she understood fear, power, control, observation, strategy. She had all the advantages of being underestimated, and now she had chosen Zina. "You know why you're here," Hana said quietly. I need to see if you belong." Zina's mind froze. Belong? Belong where? Hana stood suddenly, chair scraping softly against the floor. She leaned close. Her voice dropped so low only Zina could hear. "If my father thinks you're useful, everything changes. If he doesn't, well." She let the sentence hang, then she walked away again. And Zina realized something chilling. The men weren't following her. They were following Hana. And yet, somehow, Zina was trapped too. She hadn't chosen this. She wasn't trained for this. She was just sitting there, in the wrong corner, at the wrong reception, at the wrong time. And suddenly she knew, from now on, every step she took would be watched. Every word she spoke would matter. Every glance could be recorded. The child, Hana, was the key, and Zina didn't know what she opened the door to. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Do not speak to strangers. Do not trust anyone. Not even her." But the envelope had already made one thing clear. She wasn't safe. And she wasn't alone. Somewhere deep inside, a cold voice whispered, "You've been chosen, and once chosen, there's no turning back." Ina stayed frozen in her corner, the envelope still open on the table, though she hadn't dared touch its contents again. She stared across the room, the conversations and clinking glasses fading into background noise. Every time she blinked, she imagined Hana's sharp, unreadable eyes scanning her from somewhere in the room. She had been chosen. And not for friendship, not for a casual curiosity. Chosen for observation, evaluation, something else, something dangerous. Her instincts told her to leave, right now, grab her things and walk out, pretending she'd never been here. But Zina knew better. Some doors, once opened, didn't allow exit. The first subtle signal came when a server approached her table, tray of hors d'oeuvres in hand. He set a plate down. His hand shook ever so slightly as he did. Normally, she would have dismissed it. And everyone gets nervous around executives. But this was different. His eyes flicked toward the far corner, then quickly away, lingering on nothing. But Zina noticed. "Everything all right?" she asked quietly. The man swallowed hard, nodded, and moved on without another word. That's when Zina realized it wasn't just the envelope, not just the men in suits quietly observing her. This entire reception had shifted in response to Hana. She wasn't just a child. She was the pivot on which this entire room turned, and Zina was now part of that equation. Her phone buzzed again, a message, one she didn't recognize. Do not underestimate her, not even for a second. No signature, no sender, cold, precise, terrifying. Zina's heartbeat quickened. She knew then that staying calm was no longer an option. Her mind raced. The contracts in her tablet suddenly felt meaningless. Numbers didn't matter anymore. Strategy wasn't just corporate, it was survival. She needed to understand Hana, and more importantly, the world that surrounded her. She watched as the little girl moved across the room again, her white dress flowing softly with each step. Men and women subtly adjusted their paths around her, a silent respect that bordered on fear. Hana's eyes locked on Zina for just a moment, and in that glance, Zina felt 1,000 unspoken messages. Watch carefully. Observe. Don't make mistakes. And then Hana stopped near the bar, speaking quietly to a man Zina didn't recognize. Words too soft for Zina to hear. But the man's body stiffened the moment Hana spoke. He glanced around nervously and then moved away, leaving the girl standing alone. Zina's stomach twisted. She didn't understand why, but she knew this child had power beyond her years. Power that was invisible, silent, and absolute. Her own table felt suddenly exposed. The men in suits who had been lingering around the edges of the room subtly repositioned, shifting closer, creating a protective barrier without ever acknowledging it openly. Zina realized then that she couldn't ignore the fact that she was now inside Hana's orbit. Every move she made, every word she spoke, every glance she cast would be measured and evaluated, and the thought chilled her more than anything else. A soft tug at her sleeve pulled her attention down. Hana had returned, standing beside her, hands folded neatly in front of her. "You're thinking too much," she said softly. "It makes you nervous." "I'm not nervous," Zina replied, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "I'm cautious." Hana tilted her head. "There's no difference. I can tell," Zina blinked. How do you know what I'm thinking?" Hana's lips curved into a small smile. "I've seen a lot. I know patterns. You can't hide from me." The words should have unsettled her more, but somehow Zina felt a thread of fascination creeping in alongside the fear. But this child, this 9-year-old girl, was not what she seemed. Every instinct screamed danger, but every part of her mind wanted to understand. Before she could speak, one of the men in suits subtly leaned toward her, voice low. "Do not leave her sight," he murmured. Zina froze. "Excuse me?" "You're not just with her," the man said, eyes flicking toward Hana. "You're in her orbit, and when she chooses, she doesn't release easily." Zina's pulse jumped. This wasn't about business anymore. And this wasn't about contracts or deals. This was about survival. Hana's eyes seemed to glint at her from across the room. "I like to know who matters," she said softly. The man straightened and left, blending into the crowd as though he had never been there. Zina's thoughts churned. "Why me?" she whispered to herself. "Why now?" She remembered the envelope, the photographs, the subtle warnings. And she remembered the whispers about Tae-ho Lee's daughter and the invisible fear that rippled across the room the first time she noticed Hana. Something inside her knew that this was only the beginning. And then, a soft sound drew her attention. A click, barely audible. She glanced down and noticed her tablet screen had a new notification. "You are being evaluated. Actions have consequences. Do not fail." No sender, no name, just the stark black text. Zina's breath caught. She closed the tablet slowly, heart hammering. She wasn't dealing with a normal child. Hana was more than that. She was a weapon disguised as innocence, trained to manipulate, observe, and test people far beyond her years. And now Zina understood, with chilling clarity, she had been drawn into something far larger than herself. Somewhere in the shadows, her life was no longer her own. Every move she made, Every word she spoke would be watched, not by her peers, not by her colleagues, but by Hana, and by the forces surrounding Hana. The next step would be dangerous. She could feel it. Hana approached again, slow, deliberate, and whispered softly, "Soon, you will understand. And when that happens, you won't be able to leave." Zina's stomach twisted. The room felt smaller, suffocating, as though the walls themselves had closed in. She realized then that this wasn't about friendship. It wasn't about protection. It was about control. And Hana, 9 years old, and was already in command. The room felt colder, though the lights still glimmered warmly across marble floors. Zina's fingers trembled slightly as she closed her tablet. Every glance over her shoulder reminded her that the men in suits hadn't gone anywhere. They were shadows now, moving only when she did, silent, precise, invisible. Hana sat across from her again, legs swinging lightly under the table, hands folded neatly, head tilted. 9 years old, yet every movement screamed control. You know why I'm here," Hana said, voice soft but firm. "I don't," Zina replied, keeping her voice steady though her stomach churned. "And I'm not sure I want to." Hana smiled faintly. "You will. You always find out eventually." Before Zina could answer, her phone buzzed once more. Another message flashed across the screen. "Do not approach her alone. They are watching, and they will not hesitate." Zina's throat went dry. The words weren't typed casually. They were precise, deliberate, and designed to unsettle. Her mind raced. Who were they? Not hotel staff, not investors. Someone else entirely. Someone connected to Hana. Someone who could reach her anywhere. And Hana? She knew Zina was reading the message. Her eyes glimmered, not with innocence, but with a knowledge far beyond her years. "You're nervous," Hana said softly. "I can tell." "I'm not nervous," Zina countered, though her pulse betrayed her. "Cautious," Hana corrected. "There's a difference." Zina's jaw tightened. "Hey, what do you want from me?" Hana leaned closer, whispering almost conspiratorially. "I want to see who you really are. And if my father finds out, he will decide if you are useful." "Useful?" Zina asked, heart pounding. "I'm not a tool. I'm a businesswoman." Hana's lips curved into a faint smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "Everyone has a purpose. You just haven't discovered yours yet." Zina looked around. The room had shifted subtly again. Conversations were softer now. Chairs were pulled back. Even the waiters moved with careful, almost unnatural precision. She realized then that she wasn't being watched. She was being evaluated. Every move, every word, every glance. And if she failed, she didn't want to imagine the consequences. A man in a dark suit appeared behind Hana, as if materializing from nowhere. Zina froze. The man's eyes flicked to her and then back to Hana. He leaned slightly forward and whispered something inaudible. Hana nodded, then turned her gaze on Zina again, the calm, unreadable expression of a child who already understood far more than anyone should. "Do you see them?" Hana asked quietly. Zina swallowed. "Yes," she whispered. "They're not here for you." "Yet," Hana said, voice low. "But if you get in the way, or if my father thinks you're a threat—" She didn't finish. The implication was enough. Zina's mind raced. The envelope, the photographs, the subtle whispers, the invisible men in suits, the messages. "Hana, Tae-ho Lee." She had walked into something far larger than herself. A world where power didn't wear a face, didn't speak in public, and yet controlled everything. And somehow, a 9-year-old girl had become the center of it all. Zina realized that she had no choice. Not anymore. She had to play the game. But before she could decide on a strategy, Hana stood and approached the reception desk. Zina watched, heart hammering. The girl spoke quietly to the receptionist, her voice carrying authority far beyond her age. Minutes later, 2 men approached Zina, stepping into her space carefully, like predators circling, invisible yet palpable. One handed her a business card. On it was only one name, Tae-ho Lee. The other leaned closer, voice dropping low. "Consider this a warning. Stay close to her. Make no mistakes. Disobedience will have consequences. Zina took the card, her hands trembling slightly. Tae-ho Lee. And the name she had only whispered in her mind moments ago, the most feared man in Asia's criminal underworld. She looked up. Hana was watching her from across the room, expression unreadable. "You've been chosen," Hana said softly, almost kindly. "And once chosen—" She paused, letting the words hang like a knife in the air. "You can't walk away." Zina swallowed hard, realizing that even leaving the hotel now wouldn't mean safety. Every step, every glance, every breath was under observation. She wasn't just a stranger here. She was part of a larger plan, part of Hana's world, whether she wanted it or not. Her phone buzzed one final time, a text from an unknown number. "If you betray her, if you fail, we will find you, always. This is your only warning." Zina's stomach twisted. She looked at Hana. 9 years old. Innocent? Hardly. Dangerous? Beyond anyone's reckoning. The room felt smaller, the walls closer. And then she realized the most terrifying truth. Hana didn't just know too much. She understood power, fear, control. And Zina was now a piece on a chessboard she couldn't see. Hana leaned closer one last time before moving away toward the exit. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Tomorrow, you will begin to understand. And when you do, you won't have a choice." Zina's heart pounded. She had been dragged into a world where even a child could command obedience, where her every move was watched, and where the line between protection and danger was invisible but lethal. She closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. The night wasn't over. It had only begun, and she knew, deep down, in every nerve and muscle, that nothing would ever be the same. Do you think Zina should trust Hana, or run before it's too late? Let's know what you think in the comment section.